This is a map of pipelines that don't exist yet, running under towns most of Britain has never heard of. And this is the plan to fill those pipelines with something that could either clean up an entire industrial region or lock the UK into fossil fuels for another 50 years. The project is called HyNet Northwest, and depending on who you ask, it's either one of the most important climate infrastructure schemes in the country or a multi-billion-pound gift to the same oil and gas companies that caused the problem in the first place. Today, we'll look at what HyNet actually is, why the money is so controversial, and whether its biggest legal battles are still ahead. HyNet Northwest is being built across Cheshire, Merseyside, Greater Manchester, and North Wales, stretching from Flintshire and Wrexham in the west to Lancashire in the east. At its core, the project does two things. First, it produces low-carbon blue hydrogen, made from natural gas, but with the carbon dioxide stripped out before it's burned. Second, it captures carbon dioxide from heavy industry across the region. An oil refinery, a cement plant, a fertilizer plant, glass and chemical works, and pipes it out to sea to be buried permanently under the seabed of Liverpool Bay. The idea is to decarbonize the industries that are hardest to clean up any other way, while also piping hydrogen into homes and businesses as a replacement for natural gas. The backbone of the whole project is the Stanlow manufacturing complex in Ellesmere Port, a working oil refinery that's being converted into the site of the UK's first large-scale hydrogen production hub. From there, a consortium of companies, including Eni, Cadent, Essar-owned EET Fuels, and chemical firm Eni, is building out roughly 100 kilometers of new hydrogen pipeline to supply industrial customers, alongside a separate carbon dioxide pipeline network that reuses old gas infrastructure. The captured carbon is meant to travel offshore and be pumped into depleted gas fields under Liverpool Bay, fields that had already produced natural gas for decades before being repurposed for storage. On the hydrogen side, Eni is developing storage in salt caverns at the Holford brine field in Cheshire. 19 caverns capable of holding a combined 3 terawatt-hours of energy underground. The scale of ambition here is genuinely enormous. Government and project documents put the plan's long-term hydrogen output at 30 terawatt-hours a year by 2030, delivered in 4 stages through separate production plants, alongside a target of removing up to 10 million tons of carbon dioxide annually by 2030. The UK government's overall ambition is 10 gigawatts of low-carbon hydrogen production by 2030, and HyNet's flagship Stanlow plant alone is projected to deliver around 4 gigawatts of that by 2030, roughly 40% of the UK's national target. It's also billed as an economic engine for a part of England that hasn't always shared in the country's growth, with the UK government's own figures pointing to around 2,800 direct skilled jobs across construction and operations, and industry estimates running considerably higher once the wider supply chain and future phases are counted, alongside a projected regional economic boost running into the tens of billions of pounds over the project's lifetime. So, where does the money actually come from? HyNet has been building momentum for nearly a decade. Early development work was funded in relatively modest chunks, a few million here, a few million there from government innovation competitions. Then in October 2021, HyNet was named one of just 2 Track 1 clusters in the government's national carbon capture and storage sequencing process, which effectively put it first in line for serious public backing. By 2025, that backing had scaled up dramatically. At an energy security summit in April 2025, the Prime Minister announced a £2 billion supply chain contract awarded to Eni for the carbon capture and storage side of the project alone. That's just one contract inside a much bigger funding picture. HyNet is one of 2 projects, alongside Teesside's East Coast cluster, set to share a government subsidy commitment reported at roughly £21.7 billion over 25 years. Paid for in large part through additions to consumer energy bills, meaning HyNet's own portion is a substantial slice of that rather than the full amount. Separately, Project backers have put the wider economic impact of HyNet on the Northwest and North Wales, jobs, supply chains, and inward investment over 25 years at around £17 billion, a projection of economic benefit rather than a construction price tag. It's this mix of headline subsidy numbers and long-term economic forecasts that gets rolled together in the press into eye-catching multi-billion-pound totals. If you've enjoyed the video so far, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed to the channel. Now, back to HyNet, because that funding structure is exactly where the controversy starts. A campaign group called HyNot, made up of local residents and climate campaigners, argues that HyNet isn't a climate solution at all, but a way for fossil fuel companies to keep extracting and burning gas while wearing a green label. Their objection centers on blue hydrogen itself. Because blue hydrogen is made from natural gas, critics say the process still depends on continued gas extraction and, increasingly, on imported liquefied natural gas as North Sea supplies run down, which raises questions about how low carbon the end product really is once methane leakage and imports are factored in. HyNot has also raised safety concerns, arguing that hydrogen is a small, volatile molecule that is prone to leaking, and that the carbon dioxide pipelines pose their own risk since concentrated CO₂ can act as an asphyxiant if a pipeline ruptures. The group points to cancer rates in Cheshire West running about 16% above the national average, and argues that adding a cluster of new industrial infrastructure to a region already carrying that health burden deserves far more scrutiny than it's received. In August 2025, those objections moved from protest into the courtroom. HyNot filed for a judicial review of the government's decision to approve the offshore carbon storage element of the project, which had been given the go-ahead by the Secretary of State on March 17, 2025, and by regulators the following month. The legal challenge argued the approval process failed to properly assess the risk of major accidents, failed to look at the cumulative climate impact of the whole HyNet scheme rather than just this one piece of it, and failed to comply with habitat protection rules covering protected bird species and marine life near the offshore storage site. In October 2025, the High Court refused HyNot permission to proceed, ruling that none of its three grounds were arguable and that the group had, in any case, waited too long to bring the claim. HyNot has since said it intends to appeal the ruling, so the legal fight isn't entirely over, but for now the project's core approvals stand, and the timeline is still tight. HyNet's carbon capture and storage operations aren't expected to properly start until 2027, with the hydrogen pipeline and production network following shortly after and the bulk of construction wrapping up sometime between 2028 and 2030. There have already been signs of strain along the way. Johnson Matthey, the company that originally developed the core hydrogen production technology behind HyNet's flagship Stanlow plant, sold off its entire blue hydrogen business in 2025 after taking heavy losses. That doesn't by itself prove blue hydrogen can't work at scale. Johnson Matthey's exit was a corporate decision about one company's business line, but critics have pointed to it as a reason to question just how confident the wider industry really is in the economics. Some critics have already started drawing comparisons to HS2, Britain's other infamous megaproject known for spiralling costs and shifting timelines, though whether that comparison holds up is very much still an open question. So, where does that leave the project? On paper, HyNet has almost everything a UK infrastructure megaproject needs to succeed. A first-mover advantage as one of only two original Track 1 CCS clusters, a consortium of established industrial partners, existing pipeline infrastructure that cuts construction costs, and a level of government commitment that's already translated into billions of pounds of contracts. The region it covers is genuinely industrial and genuinely in need of a decarbonisation pathway, since cement, fertiliser and glass production don't have many other realistic routes to net zero. But the project is also betting an enormous amount of public money on a technology, large-scale carbon capture, that critics correctly point out has a patchy track record globally, with a majority of past large CCS projects worldwide either delayed or cancelled outright. Add an unresolved appeal from campaigners, a departing technology partner, and a funding model that leans heavily on household energy bills, And HyNet's path to 2030 looks far less certain than its glossy renderings suggest. Whether HyNet becomes the backbone of Britain's industrial decarbonisation or a cautionary tale about betting billions on unproven technology probably won't be clear for years. What is clear is that the outcome, one way or another, is going to show up on every energy bill in the country long before the first cavern of hydrogen ever gets used. Thanks for watching.